A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, George Lucas crafted what some call the greatest sci-fi masterpiece of the last, well, forever, I guess, because they didn't really make them that long ago. But anyway, I'm Eric, and welcome to Cineblab.
I'm Chris. Did I just kick the camera?
Yeah, you kicked it, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
You can see it?
Yeah, you definitely see it. We're off to a really good start already. We're respecting the gear and everything.
It is like that sometimes.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
Star
Introduction.
Wars. Oh,
introduction. Yeah.
What did we say in the introduction?
You just gotta say your name, I suppose.
Oh, so my name's Chris. I call myself an amateur cinephile because I enjoy watching movies.
Yeah.
Probably more than lots of other stuff.
I also have the movie bug, and today's movie that we're going to review is one of my very favorites that's ever been created. Everybody has said everything that there is to say, I would say, about this movie at this point, and so I don't know what value we're necessarily going to bring to like the conversation of Star Wars, but I am going to say how I feel about it. So to preface, I'm a big Star Wars fan. I've loved the movies forever since I was old enough to know what things are, I suppose.
How were you introduced to Star Wars?
Oh, that's a good question. I think that my dad liked it and had the VHSs and showed them to me and my sister when we were young. So maybe that's how I was exposed, but I might be misremembering that. Possibly.
That sounds really familiar to me as well. My dad bought me the box set when I was very young.
Oh yeah,
and he would watch them over and over. And well, I'm a boy, so I would just sit down and watch them over and over with him.
I was like that with Star Wars. My sister was like that with Grease, actually. She would watch the Grease the musical, which maybe we'll do an episode on one day, possibly.
I don't think I've ever actually seen it the whole way through.
You're not missing much. No, I'm just kidding. People love Grease.
I think it's probably good.
It's of that era too. I think they were the same year.
Yeah, that's when Travolta was still like at the top of his game, right?
Yeah, well.
Or was that like him?
John
starting?
Travolta was like that was the beginning of his career. Really, it was like his second movie or something like that.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Carrie, the Stephen King.
That was his first movie.
That was his first movie, I think.
I didn't even know he was in that movie.
And so, important to note, this is a huge, star generator. The people that acted in Star Wars, like everybody knows, even the most minor character in Star Wars. This was probably the biggest vehicle for launching unknowns into complete stardom. Like that had happened in a really long time, giving people a chance on sort of new IPs that were untested back then, but
that doesn't happen anymore.
But even like the smallest people in that movie, like everyone is obsessed over, which is kind of interesting how powerful like the cultural force that is Star Wars is. That's like outside of the movie itself. So Star Wars is obviously a movie, right? It's obviously a movie, but it's also like its own universe. You know what I mean? This is the most expansive intellectual property, empire in the history of movies. There's video games, books. They have like audio. Any.
They probably have hundreds of books, don't they?
Definitely, they have comic books and full length fiction novellas. It's an extremely expansive world, and it all started from this and so anyway, I've loved the movies forever, and I haven't watched them in a while, probably a few years. And so you've never seen it. You have seen it when you were really young.
Yeah, when I was very young.
Yeah, but you hadn't seen it in a while. I've seen it probably 50 times or something like that, but it's been a while since I've actually sat down to watch it.
Did you gain any appreciation this last time that you watched it?
I definitely did. Some initial things after I had not watched the movie for so many years and watching it again that struck out to me was just how good the version looks. It's on Disney Plus right now. So obviously, there's the original version that came out in 1977, and then an update a year later when he retitled it Episode 4: A New Hope, and then the 1997 special edition, and then even subsequent changes that happened since it went on Disney Plus in 2017 or 2018 or whatever the year was. But that's the definitive version now. What's on Disney Plus, and I have to say that it looks astounding. So, I'd always watched it on VHS when I was younger, and there's that film grain that comes with having a VHS film, and I was just kind of
which in a way it also helped though.
Yeah,
it also helped to hide the details.
I mean, it definitely sold the illusion, right? Having that blur in the old things, and that made it a little bit easier to get into it. But it was a little bit taken aback.
It's a magical film.
Like, do you remember the opening scene there in the blockade runner when
Yeah.
Darth Vader first storms in and starts choking the guy and throwing the guy and asking where the plans are, and C-3PO is like walking around. You could see like these like like connectors and like these like intricate little like designs in his brass and everything like that, and the circle on his stomach
so
and
good, yeah.
the wire sticking out of him. He looked so dang good. Like it was like I couldn't believe how like real it looked in a certain sense.
incredible.
Like you remember in Avatar, like the first time in 3D when like that guy's fist to the spaceship like starts pointing out at you and you're freaking out because it just looks like you didn't believe. It's like this whole thing. So I was a little bit amazed at like the quality of it. But like you were saying, part of the problem with something that's like hyper detailed or whatever and like hyper real and you can focus on it is it's easier to dial in on like imperfections, or it's easier to like lose that sense of immersion. And so I think that was always the biggest challenge that George Lucas was going to have making this movie, no matter what, was selling the illusion that this is a real like universe, a real galaxy where real struggles are happening with real people, because it's like phantasmagorical, the whole Star Wars universe.
At least when I was a kid, I couldn't even fathom the possibility of this not being real.
Well, me too. That's the other thing. I completely believed this when I was a kid. I was like, this is like just as reputable as Santa Claus himself. Like, I'm dead serious. It's a known thing that Santa's going to get you presents, and it's a known thing that Luke's going to kick some Empire butt. You know, and so that was very comforting as a 5-year-old.
100%
that thought.
Real. This is real. This is happening.
And so I want to dive into the thought of like realism in this one, and what allowed me to become so immersed in it and buy it as a real experience, right? Is I think that the initial Star Wars movie, A New Hope, as it's now titled, is slower than like any movie that you might see today. There's way more time setting everything up and like building the world and like showing like, oh, here's a droid in the background, here's a demon guy in the background, here's a guy that looks like a turnip playing an oboe in the background. You know what I mean? And like, here's a gigantic slug thing that like stormtroopers are riding around on Tatooine, like in the background. Here's a droid that has security cameras on it following the stormtroopers around Mos Eisley in the background. There's actually constant establishing shots and to like explain like the world that they're in and like the characters that inhabit it or whatever. Like it's literally like jammed down your throat in a certain way. Like here's a cool like little roller skate doll. Yeah. Every like scene has something that kind of reminds you that like this is a bigger than life experience. Like it takes really an entire galaxy to like sell how massive this epic drama is. This like battle
because it is a drama.
The light side and the dark side, and so that's I think the number one thing that I can think of about why Star Wars was such a success and why I love it so much is this like commitment to world building and really creating like a true breathing space that's like filled with all kinds of wacky droids and things like that. So that is initially what allows me to even get into the taxi, that's taking us to the amusement park to go on the giant roller coaster.
Now that we have series, because we have like Star Wars series now. Do you feel that movies was always the best like method of transportation for this story, or? I
think yes, because America is sort of built on like the vehicle internationally of Hollywood, right? And like at any time someone outside of the United States like thinks of what America is like, they probably think of like some Johnny Depp movie or some Leonardo DiCaprio movie or something like that, or whatever it might be, and like that's like their idea of like what America is, and so it's extremely important, the way that like that's portrayed and everything like that, And I think that another thing, like talking globally, I'm just going to pivot here slightly. Is this influence that he had from Akira Kurosawa from Japan? Like the Seven Samurai and Hidden Fortress, and there's a massive influence on here from like those Japanese stories from Akira Kurosawa. Like Yojimbo, like the showdown like ninja movie where he beats up the whole. But there's massive like scale here, and even like the lightsabers, that are basically like symbolic samurai swords between Jedi's, which are samurai.
Until you said it, I feel like that didn't click.
Yeah, I mean it's definitely like 13th century guy in armor like slashing at people.
I guess like since I saw it like when I was really young, like I still my impression of like how I see it is how my eyes initially saw it. And it's like this is the magic space sword. Like it never, my mind never made a connotation to to it being like inspired in something real.
Yeah.
To me, this was always like, this is how space is. This is everybody in space has light swords and light guns. This is space.
That's another thing like that sells the believability. It's not just like characters and droids and stuff that he makes these scenes on. It's these like tangibles, like a blaster, like whatever the Millennium Falcon or like. Whatever it might be, these big soup can grenade launchers that the stormtroopers always have with them, or whatever. There's prop work in here that really like sells it. Like this is a universe as well, and like there's different settings on the guns for stun versus kill. Like apparently,
the sets are absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Incredible.
Heck yeah.
Like the costume work department. Props, everything.
I'm gonna give it like a 7 or an 8 out of 10. The prop, the costume work. Okay, some of those guys just had like, let's just be honest, jumpsuits on.
Yes,
but
there was a guy that had like a belt that had like a big buckle, and it's like, where did they bought that? Where did they get that belt? Like,
I'm glad that they had it. That one scene where they have to swing across the chasm.
Big buckle and boots, and it's like, this guy's American.
I mean, I think that it definitely is American in that regard. And you got to remember that, like George Lucas, the movie that he made previous to this was American Graffiti, which was like a kind of an homage to 1950s America and kids obsessed with their cars once they're like free to be teenagers and like get out of their parents' house and like go out and visit their friends at the malt store on Saturday night, and that was also the movie that sort of inspired like Happy Days, the 70s TV show throwback thing, and so. He had already like a pretty big impact on American culture with American Graffiti being such a big deal before this came out, and so it wasn't like he came into this as a complete unknown. He actually was kind of coming into this movie as like a boy directing star.
Yeah, so George was like at the top of his game when he made.
At this point, he like had one win. Well, to be honest, he had one major loss that we're not going to talk about right now, which is THX 1138 4EB Electric Labyrinth.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, that's literally what it's called. It was his student film when he was a student at the University of Southern California, the film school.
Yeah.
Whatever it was. I think it was the University of Southern California in LA, like UCLA is maybe where he went. And he made this student film that was called Electric Labyrinth THX 1138 4EB. And that was the name of the movie.
Right.
And it was like a guy, who's trapped in a sort of oppressive, futuristic, fascist society where everything's always white, and you're not allowed to have emotions. You're not allowed to have love and everything like that. And if you think the wrong way, they're gonna come and get you. You know what I mean? Kind of deal.
Like a dystopian.
Yeah. So he originally made a 15-minute version of it when he was a student at UCLA, and it got really good praise. And like his professors and everything were so stoked on it. They like sent that off to film festivals where he like won a bunch of awards all over the world as like a whatever he was, a freshman or a junior or whatever, senior in college. I don't quite know what year it was when he made that. Probably senior.
It was very fortunate though.
But like it was a smash, and so what he did is he was actually really good friends with Francis Ford Coppola, from The Godfather as well. They were really great friends.
Before he was anybody?
Yeah, before he was anybody.
Wow.
And so Francis Ford Coppola saw his movie, his student film that everybody was raving about, and was like, I like you so much, buddy, I'm going to start a company with you. Because like he had made a couple of successful movies too, and so he was like, this is my buddy, where they had like such a strong click for each other. You know what I mean? It was like when John Lennon met Yoko Ono, these two.
I had no idea.
They were stuck to each other.
I feel like I know little to nothing about.
Yeah, and so they made a company called American Zoetrope, and their first idea was to raise a crap load of money, like $400,000, which was big money for them at that time or whatever, from like investors or a studio company to make a full-length version of Electric Labyrinth THX 1138 4EB. And this time it was an hour and a half long, and there's like a love story in there where he like falls in love with the woman, and then they chase him down and stuff, and he can't. I don't know. I never saw it actually. I want to make it one of the movies we see.
What's like the genre?
I saw the short version. I didn't see the long version.
What's the setting on it?
It's like futuristic, like like all whitewashed walls all the time, and like bright lights and numbers tattooed on people's heads. Everyone wearing identical jumpsuits, and like a central station, like a police monitoring station where they watch everybody. In the second,
sounds pretty good.
And it's an inmate, and his name is inmate 1138. And so they're like, so he runs away and escapes, and they're on their control monitors the whole time, yelling at him through all the PAs that are everywhere. Be like, 1138, turn back, you are violating the law. Like this, it's it's really well made, but it's like that. You know what I mean? Like it's You got to just suspend that belief, buddy. You know what I'm saying? Just suspend that belief. And so he goes from making that, and as soon as American Zoetrope, the company that Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas made, they released the movie. Oh, it sucked. People hated it.
Really?
Yeah, they lost all their money, and they were like not even really that good buddies anymore.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, but George Lucas, his wife was a film editor. Her name was Marcia Lucas, and she worked with Francis Ford Coppola and directed edited some of his movies, like in the 70s at that time.
Is that why they knew each other then?
Yeah, that's partly why they knew each other too. Yeah, and so he had his wife actually edit the Star Wars movie. So part of the reason why Star Wars is famously so well is that Marcia Lucas came in and did such a good job editing it. Where especially the last,
she's like a talent then, right?
Oh, she's a mega talent. She won an Oscar. I think Star Wars didn't really win that many Oscars, but the one that they did was like best editing for his wife, Marcia Lucas, and so she's very proud of that. Obviously, but she did a fantastic job.
Yeah.
Because in the movie, the final scene was actually a disaster.
This one?
Yeah. Originally, like you know how the reason that they were attacking the Death Star is because they were about to blow up the planet Tatooine, which is where the rebel fortress was, where the rebels are operating from. They actually edited, like, in post, like that countdown screen of, like, 5 minutes until the Death Star fires. Originally, there was no, like, imminent threat of the planet being destroyed, like, for the run with the X-Wings to, like, blow up, the Death Star.
Like in the current one.
In the original script of it, basically, before they actually, like, when they filmed it, but before it was edited and released. Basically, like, there was no reason for them to do that. They just went and attacked it and blew it up, and it, like, didn't feel as like warm and fuzzy because they didn't also prevent millions and billions of people from dying on Dantooine and stuff and like destroying the entire rebel movement. And so that she edited that whole thing and like concocted it and really I think kind of saved the final act of the movie. And so she's a big deal, honestly. I don't think people give Marcia a lot of credit, but
how do you know?
You got to look at the story of how they broke up. It has to do with stained glass ceiling, I'll tell you that.
Wait, so they're not together anymore?
No, they're not together anymore. Now,
man,
he's moved on up. He's upgraded.
Well, she sounds like a talent, though.
No, she is. So she for sure is.
Is the person he's with now like a
she's
Nobel
like
Prize winner?
Well, no, she's like a wealth advisor, but
Oh.
But she makes him laugh.
Oh, okay.
So, now George is like a normal guy. You know what it's like when you feel like
anyone to challenge him artistically.
I think that's true for sure because like he,
and I'm assuming that that's something that in the sort of world that they live in is something that's very valuable.
Yeah, to the creative.
And have like somebody that can provide like a female touch to the works you do.
Yeah,
because as I feel like as a man, you kind of have like a narrower perspective. Any gender, I would say. Has like so if you have both of them, I feel like you can make better stuff if you have both working together.
Well, certainly it was a good idea to pull her in, because she had the unique ideas. I heard originally that it kind of wasn't flowing or something before she was working on it, and it really started actually coming together after that. And so obviously she's like a godsend if you can ever get Marcia Lucas on your film, obviously.
Man, she worked with us.
But some other things I'd be like remiss, I guess we didn't talk about was the music.
The music.
And so what'd you think of the music throughout it?
The music is it takes something special for it to fuel a generation. Like it is a fundamental building block of this franchise.
Yeah.
And I feel that it reverberates throughout the industry. It's as an example of like, oh, how can we make something like, and then like, oh, like look at Star Wars, like look what they did.
Yeah,
it's very iconic.
Well, I mean, certainly you can play like any part of any of the Star Wars soundtracks anywhere in a movie, and people get it. Like you're trying to be heroic, they're trying to be evil. If you hear the Imperial March or whatever,
it does transmit the feeling very well.
Yeah. And you can even really hum a lot of the songs, and kids kind of know what you're talking about. It's a very like cross-generational.
Yeah, I feel like I didn't notice it until you pointed it out to me while we were watching it, but definitely when something Jedi heroic is happening, that tune always plays.
Yeah, the Jedi, the Force leitmotif there.
It kind of plays on your psyche, like it eases you into a train of thought. Like, oh, this is what we're trying to invoke in you, and you understand that it's very clear in the way that they do it.
I don't know if that's necessarily like it was always like brilliant like that, like it immediately like hit you like that, or it's just like the nostalgia that like I have for the music that like makes me think like no matter what context it was in, like it would have worked perfectly kind of thing. And I don't know like how much of that is true.
No, I do agree with you though. I think they did a really good job with the tracks. That they really convey the idea that wants to be conveyed. They did an excellent job with it.
Yeah, and speaking of which, of the Force itself, which is kind of the point like of the movie in a certain way. In a way, I almost think that like the Force is sort of a character in and of itself.
Yeah,
like in the way like Han's a character. I'm sure that they didn't write that like in the screenplay. In the dialogue line. The Force is pushing someone. Or
so the Force is like destiny.
Well, if you remember Obi-Wan's speech, he was something like it's all around us. It's a force that penetrates us and moves through us and allows us to perceive the galaxy or something like that. So, you may also famously remember midi-chlorians from the Star Wars.
That's because they were trying to explain them, right?
I think that was a sufficient explanation originally, which is it's a force that's all around us and binds us and helps us do magic tricks.
Some people have a lot of it.
Yeah.
Some don't.
Some people are infected harder with the Force than others. It's a little bit virusy in a certain regard. It's
But isn't it like a born thing? Like you're born with a certain amount of midichlorians, or something that you can train? You know what?
That's a good question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? Like, did the first Jedi like just be born with Jedi powers, or did he have to train?
That's true.
And like write down his own philosophy and then teach a student or something like that. How did Jediism get started?
But and then like. If you train your whole life, does that mean your genetic offspring is gonna be more propense to it's gonna be just stronger genetically? Because I feel like your genes don't change even though if you're in shape, right?
No, it's just you're able to like manipulate the power of the Force to do more of your own bidding.
That's true. That's true.
It's like
the Force works in mysterious ways.
But it was cool. One of the things that I think really worked about this too is that there is this like character of the Force where I don't even remember the Force tricks. He confuses the guys, like, you don't need to see these droids in Mos Eisley.
And then he did, like, a sound, too, right?
Yeah, he projected a sound like a ventriloquist when he was sneaking past the guards on the Death Star after he turned off the tractor beam to go fight Darth Vader.
Yeah, and the Force are so... It guides them, right?
It just certainly...
So when he was training with the bot...
though.
Yeah, and then when he shot the Star Wars... Oh yeah, like they have to it talks to them, right? Like it guides them. It guides their hand.
So this is getting into another topic, right? Force ghosts, which is like an actual person, and then like the Force itself without an embodiment.
Do the Sith affect the Force in the same way?
Oh, definitely.
So the Sith can also be guided by the Force?
Yeah.
Wow.
Okay, let me go into this because you're thinking like, isn't the Force like a pure force like of good or whatever? So like, how are they able to manipulate a Force neutral, for good? I think it is neutral. So in the original journal where like George Lucas originally wrote the idea for Star Wars, he called it the Journal of the Wills, which is spelled Whills, like Wahills, basically. And apparently they're like godlike creatures in the universe that are like, your thought of maybe like Egyptian gods. There's like multiples of them, and some of them are good and some of them are bad, and they're able to like manipulate this midi-chlorians throughout the universe through different people and through different things to like enact their will. And so like all of Star Wars, when you think about it, is really like just like the wills of the wills of these like gods, like using these like characters as like action figures to bang up against each other or something like that. And so like that is like where they get their stuff, is they're like channeling their like god without knowing it, their will to like move the Force through it, which is like
that's supposed to be like the canon, like or what he wanted.
That's it to like be that's my interpretation actually of everything that's going on, and I'm pretty sure that's like accurate to what he originally intended. Yeah. But Disney has tried very hard to avoid any of the stuff that he wanted. He actually originally wrote a screenplay for episodes 7, 8, and 9, the Disney movies.
Really?
Yes.
And they decided to not do that?
No, they completely... He sold them his franchise for like $4 billion, right? And they were like, we're totally going to use your ideas, buddy. And he's like, awesome, when are we going to get started? And they're like, we'll call you. And then he goes back, to...
And then you get JJ Abrams to do it.
That's right. And then they're like, JJ,
that sounds
I want you to burn this thing.
That sounds like such a good idea.
And just make me a brand new one. And
George Lucas
all
did
of
this?
his ideas.
Yes. All right, let's get JJ.
But he did, like, apparently in this script have, like, the wills as part of it. Like, this, you know, these gods that, like, you know, reveal what they want to these other people or something like that. Mm-hmm. And apparently it was going to be a girl, like, a younger Skywalker girl and, like, a brother. So, like, a brother and sister, teenage, kind of early 20s hero. And so it still would have been like a Daisy Ridley, Adam Driver type of thing, but just with a completely outrageously different story and some of the touch of the Wills stuff, which everybody loves, you know?
I mean, why not?
So, like, it's interesting to think, like, what the Force is or whatever and, like, what it's able to, but I think that is... I think that's interesting that there's, like, these gods or whatever that, like, want to control everything, and I understand, like, why he wanted to go down that road, you know? But I think that the same way, there's other people that are like, I don't want it to be like a Deus Ex Machina. I don't want there to be an explanation for something that's just cool.
I mean, yeah. I guess. I do feel like there's value in having something that George made in a universe that has been seeping in for decades at this point. Like, it has to have merit to explore whatever it is he wants to explore in this universe.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's like a bias that I have or anything, but I feel like this is a person that created this universe and had a vision for it and has been working with it and around it for decades and decades.
Yeah.
Maybe what you want to do is something different, but I wouldn't completely shut down that door. Mm-hmm. Maybe like carry it out and give him a series. Like it's a story that I feel like it's probably worth telling.
Yeah, but yeah,
that's just how I feel about it.
I mean, so like the other thing is that there's a Star Wars story, right? Which is like the story that everyone knows, which is, you know, Luke has to rescue Leia with the help of Obi-Wan and Han Solo, right? And like that's the basic story, right? But there's also sort of a sub-story underneath it, which is like an archetypal story, you know, like going back to the first stories, you know, like the Shakespearean epics, you know, this is a story that's been told many times in a way, like the hero's journey, you know, like the classic hero's journey. And so it's also sort of a metaphor for like all the great epics of all time, or even you could put yourself in there if you see yourself as like a Luke type of person. And I think that's another reason why this works so well, is that it didn't stray too far off of like the path, you know, of like a traditional hero story. And it was really easy for kids to get excited about this, which is like, oh my God, I love computers, I love droids, oh my God, I love slicing things up with swords. Like there's so many reasons, like on an intellectual level, why this, like, you know, appeals to everybody. You know, it's something that everyone can understand. There's stuff for adults for sure in here, and then there's also stuff that I think appeals to like 2-year-olds, which is like, oh my God, Jawas look kind of like my cat.
Yeah. There's. I really don't know who I wouldn't say that this is. Who I would not recommend to watch this.
I think maybe the only problem is, you know, this like this overexposure. Everybody knows about it or whatever, and so a lot of people want to discount it, right? Because it's gotten so much praise, and it's like praise is something that everybody's heard about it, right? And actual legit criticism of it. It doesn't get as much play, to be honest with you, or as many upvotes on Reddit, or as many views on YouTube or something like that. Well, actually, that's not true, to be honest, in some cases, right? But I think no matter what like metric you use to judge what a good movie is, whether it's like storytelling, or whether it's characters, or whether it's character development or something like this checks like the box on every single one of those things that you might say like makes a great movie. You know, like great Foley work, you know, great editing, great special effects, great music, you know, a great screenplay, great choice of actors, like any metric that you can think of. Like it's entertaining on every level, you know, especially I would say like Han Solo is probably my favorite person like in the movie. Like, his performance, like the comic relief that he gives versus R2-D2's like kind of sounds every once in a while. But I don't know. I think we've got about a minute left. Give me some final thoughts on what you think.
I think everyone should watch it, regardless of what you feel about it or the thoughts you had. It is a piece basically of our history. Like it has lived on throughout the years apart from the movie. Like it's taken a life on its own, and it's something that's worth experiencing. And it's just a couple hours. Was it like an hour and a half? Was it?
I think it was maybe like about 2 hours or so.
Was it about 2 hours?
Yeah. So like a pretty good length. I mean, definitely longer than the typical movie today, but they use that time to build the world and to really immerse you in the world. And it's a really satisfying story. I felt really great at the end of it when the Death Star blows up and they get the trophy. It made me feel
the medal.
great.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll give you the final
Very good
thoughts on this here. We got 10
I would
seconds.
say if I have to rate it, I would say I'll give it an 8 out of 10.
9.5 out of 10.